Thanks for watching Slice of SciFi. I'm Noah Richmond.
And I'm Lewis Howley.
So the movie is A Quiet Place Day One. Even though it's day one, it's actually part three of, I guess, the third film in what's now a trilogy of Quiet Place movies. This one showing, the original was kind of showing a family that had been living with this alien plague for a number, for quite a while. Whereas this one is showing when the whole thing happens, when the invasion happens. And of course, the original is a somewhat rural kind of setting. This one, it's completely in New York City as everything falls apart and the city's destroyed. Otherwise, it's still the same idea that these aliens hunt by sound. Everybody has to try to stay as silent as they can, or the alien zips in and kills you off. Um, so, did you have any thoughts you want to start us off with, Lewis?
Well, this movie was not what I expected. I really expected a more full-on action-based movie where there was some action in this film, but I expected it more to be kind of a pursuit type of event where the people were constantly trying to get away from these new predators from outer space. And instead, it ended up focusing more on a personal story of really one character, but also involving a second character who tags along. And I was not that engaged by the story of these two people. I mean, the personal story. I have to give the movie credit for having a hospice patient as a lead. That was intriguing because, in some ways, we know that at some fairly soon point she's probably going to die. And here she is faced with a dilemma of what she wants to do now, with death being even more proximate than it was when she was just in hospice. And that intrigued me. I liked having a cat in the movie, and I saw in the credits that the cat was played by two cats. And apparently, one of them from the production notes did not like being in water. So that almost necessitated having to do it. And one was actually a white cat, which they had to uh, doctor its fur to essentially make it look like the other cat that they went with. But I will say I liked the sets. I liked the sound design, in particular, the background noises that were made, how they could amplify water to make it seem louder than we would normally take it to be when the city is completely still, when you can't make a sound. I liked the performances of Lupita Nyong'o, and I also liked the performance of her aide, Ruben, played by Alex Wolff. I thought his performance was very good. Um, I also liked both the practical and the visual effects. And from the production notes, they tried to go with as many practical effects as they could. And I also liked the creature design. I thought that was very good. Um, and I liked the ending. I thought the ending was highly appropriate, and I won't talk any more about it. But what bothered me were the very many slow movements in this movie, slow moments, pardon me. Um, it just dragged. I just kept thinking, when are we going to move? And then there would be scenes where they're sleeping, which are of no interest whatsoever to me. I also was a little bothered. At one point, the cat seemed to be belled. And I kept thinking, why are these creatures not immediately attacking this cat? Which made me think about what sounds the creatures could hear. How tiny a sound does it have to be? How close do they have to be? That kind of thing. It also bothered me that the male character continued to wear a tie throughout this entire movie. And I thought, and admittedly, it's not right up to his neck. I mean, he has the top button is unbuttoned. But why are you wearing a tie when you've had time to sleep and everything else? It's minor, but it bothered me. And I just felt like this should have been a more action oriented thing. But it was clear that they felt that the real story was Lupita Nyong'o's story. Back to you, Noah.
Okay. Well, I have to say it's actually somewhat heartening to me hearing your feedback, because my problem with the particular screening that I attended of this movie is it was a completely packed theater, and I was sat next to somebody who clearly had some sort of health issue going on, who, it was labored breathing, um, heavy coughing with a phlegm sound with it. I was wishing to goodness I had brought some sort of a mask. I was feeling completely paranoid about sitting next to this individual. I felt very trapped. And so
Hmm.
my nerves were already kind of on edge, and I really kind of wanted to get out and get away. And then this film starts that's very abrasive and blowing up in your face on top of it. Um, so I don't know how fair of a review that I'm giving, but after listening to the things you're saying, I think that maybe the things that my reactions to the film really are the reactions that I would probably have regardless. But I do want to put out that uh, you know take what I have with the grain of salt, that this was the circumstances under which I was viewing the film. Um, but I couldn't wait to get out. I just I kept checking my watch. It just was dragging. I just didn't want to be there. I it's the closest I've come to just getting up and walking out of a press screening for anything. Um, and I guess the things as far as the film goes, I guess the other thing that I do need to say, I never saw A Quiet Place 2, and the reason I didn't is because I didn't think there was any need for it. I thought A Quiet Place, the charm of A Quiet Place is that it was complete within itself. It was like a good, somewhat indie, somewhat low budget uh, film that was a classic suspense film. It really was like going back to something that had been staged and crafted in the style of a Hitchcock type movie, suspense type film noir type movie from the 1950s type era. And I thought it was just beautiful for what it was. And as soon as I heard that there was any kind of a sequel, my immediate reaction was cash grab. I don't want to waste my time. But for some reason with this one, it was day one and you get to see how it starts and it's a whole different thing. And so I thought I'd give it a shot, but honestly, I still have the reaction of why. A Quiet Place was complete in and of itself. It did what it needed to do. The other thing is, being that this is a sequel to something that was successful, and now Hollywood can churn out money. You could see that it's a quiet place, but it's bigger and it's louder, and we have scenes where the heroes, where the characters scream and they can do it because it's raining. But I'm sorry, that's stupid. I don't buy that at all. And oh, and there's a cat. Oh, but that. Come on, are they really going to kill the cat? And it was just everything in it was so cliche. It was so predictable. You could just see who in this film had been selected ahead of time. You knew who was going to live. You knew who was going to die. It was everything was just by the numbers. Um, yeah. I honestly was, I think, even more disappointed than you were.
I found it interesting that at the beginning of the film, they felt the need to put on screen a title that said New York City's average decibel level was 90. And I thought, so we know that it's going to be quiet pretty soon. And what is the purpose of that? And to read the production notes is to read that everyone thinks that this is the greatest movie ever made. I just couldn't believe the hyperbole. It was so over the top, and and I suppose that's normal for production notes, but it did really bother me. And you're right; it was pretty predictable who would live and who would die, and you know, I wanted to comment that I did read that there are two asteroids currently approaching Earth that are going to be very close in astronomical terms to us. And if we can detect those, why are we not detecting these what look like hundreds of projectiles landing from outer space that surely must have been detectable before they hit land? And then the other peculiarity is it almost seemed as if by blowing up the bridges around Manhattan, they could contain this threat when we know A, that the first two movies are set in a rural setting, so there obviously are creatures there. And did these creatures just land in Manhattan and not in Brooklyn or Staten Island or Queens? It just seemed very peculiar to me. And so I had a lot of questions that were raised. I think because there was too much slow time, and my mind is just thinking, what about this? What about that? Why did you make this choice? Why film it this way? And especially the one what scene which in the production notes is called the Exodus, and that is all those people going to the seaport to get on a boat, and they cut to their feet to show that slowly but surely they're making too much noise. And I thought, duh, we know that something bad is going to happen. So in that ways, it was a little predictable. But I think this is a lost opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, the other thing, I guess, the one thing where I think maybe we do have a little bit of difference. I was rooting for the aliens. Like that's where you're in a bad place with the film. Like I actually was rooting to see the Alex Wolf character get, you know. But there was the fact that I just, I didn't warm to the characters. Um, but there's also, in the silliness that, oh, but somehow the cat doesn't make any noise and the cat gets, like, okay, whatever. Um, but there's also just that, that with, sorry, I guess I went a little blank there. Yeah. Anyway, regardless, I guess I guess what I'm going to say is, um, when you don't warm up to the characters, uh, and you just everything feels so contrived that you really just want to see the aliens blow everything up. I mean, for me, you've lost the film at that point anyway. So that combined with the fact that why make another Quiet Place? It was complete. It did what it needed to do. You really, I don't think, needed to expand the universe. So for me, it's not even a missed opportunity. It's a cash grab.
Well, I will say that I agree with you about the first movie. Very, very well made, unique in many ways. The premise of using American Sign Language as a way to survive was unique. There were so much good. There were so many good things about that film, and especially since I still think it's hard to make a really good horror film because it's so easy to fall into tropes and then just mine those tropes. And here now we have some quiet place tropes. Oh, you can't make any noise, you know, and those types of things that I don't know where you can go from that. You know, maybe if we had known more about why these aliens, like where they came from or what the government knew, did they not tell anybody? That would have added some more to the canon of A Quiet Place. But there's nothing new added here that I didn't already know from everything else, other than raising questions and saying that if you're in an apocalypse, please take your tie off.
Okay. All right. So I guess, final thoughts. What I'm going to say is I do agree with you that it had some great creature effects. It definitely, the feeling of devastation definitely came through. And uh, there's definitely, you can see where the craftsmanship went into the movie. But for myself, it was a painful experience. And again, it's probably not 100% the movie that made it a painful experience. I think it was partly my own viewing experience. Uh, but I really was miserable. I really wanted out. And I'm going to have to rate my experience on a scale of 1 to 5. I would have to say this was a 1.5 for me.
Yeah, I'm always debating on our scale of 1 to 5 if the average is 2.5, assuming that 5 is split in half, or if it's really 3, which is the median point between 1 and 5. But, I'm feeling like 2.5 is not an unfair rating in any case. There just was too much wrong with this movie. And I left feeling totally unfulfilled um, compared to what I wanted to see going in. And I know you can't really judge a movie based on your expectations of what it's going to be, but structurally, there were a lot of problems that I feel justify that rating.
All right. Well, that would be our thoughts on Quiet Place Day 1. And thank you for watching Slice of SciFi.
Bye.